I love Chris Paul. I've always been my statement about Chris Paul has been Chris Paul plays basketball exactly the way I wanted to play basketball. I was a very good player, and I can play in a pickup game now. And again, you always have your limitations as a human, your limitations as a basketball player. I'm in my mid-40s. I don't play as much as I'd like to. For a normal 45-year-old man, I'm in good shape. If I want to play against younger guys in basketball, I'm not in the best shape that I could be in, even at my age. But this past weekend on Saturdays, I go down, I play at this really nice gym. And what's fascinating about it is I know I can still kind of control a game, get to where I need to get everybody's shots, and win game. I know I can make my team win far more games than the normal accumulation of our talent should allow us to win. What it takes for that to happen is the guys have to trust me, right? One of the things in basketball, which I have a hard time with, is nowadays, a lot of times, outside of the center, guy gets a rebound, he just takes it up the court. Whereas I've always gotten that first outlet pass and been the guy who creates shots. In order to do that in a pickup game where you don't know who you're playing with, they just have to instinctively trust you and go I'm just going to give it to him and thinking it's probably going to come back to me. Because it is. It's not that you can't run a break. It's not that you can't make passes. It's that you can't make passes or run a break nearly as well as I can, which is going to allow you a better possibility of making shots and winning a game. So I think it's I love Chris Paul. And obviously he's been part of this massive change within the Phoenix Suns where you could call him the NBA's MVP. You could, in terms of value to a team. Look what he did last year in Oklahoma City. Look what he did this year in Phoenix. Heck, look where he had Houston and where they were after he left. Look where he was in New Orleans and Oklahoma City when he was there. He's not the only MVP candidate. Most people think Jokic will win it from Denver. But here's Nick Wright on First Things First talking about Kevin Durant.
If the Nets can't win the title with Kyrie Irving playing the best basketball of his life and with Kevin Durant staying healthy, if James Harden doesn't come back, then Kevin Durant can't be the best player in the league. Because there is no super team to go through. But when there was, 5 years ago, a 73-win team, and you had the actual best player in the league, and who was his best teammate? I remember his name, went to Duke. Oh, it's Kyrie Irving. They won that series. So it's not like it can't be done. It's not like KD and Kyrie, oh my God. Not in 2021. There are no triplets except for the ones that reside in Brooklyn. So if the belief is, Wilds, that you've got to have Harden for the Nets to be able to win the title, then that answers the question. And that's not me disrespecting Kevin Durant. I think Kevin Durant is sensational. I think Kevin Durant has a better argument for best player. Let me rephrase it. I think Kevin Durant is clearly the best player on his own team. I do think he's better than James Harden. But if the belief is the Nets have to add another MVP to the mix when they already have KD and Kyrie in order to win the title, then obviously he's not the best player alive.
That's just the most flawed logic there is. It's the most flawed logic there is. It has nothing to do with having to add James Harden. It has to do with you can't have two alpha scorers who can pass and not have a guy who facilitates all of that and orchestrates all of it and has the respect of all of them. Right? You can't. They're so highly leveraged. Look, this is basically the difference in investments. Right? The late Boone Pickens was a boomer bust financial investor. And it's kind of the Texas oil man way, where they are so highly leveraged that when they win big. When they lose big. You guys know who the head of Berkshire Hathaway is, right? Warren Buffett is the GOAT investor, right? He understands and reads them. And now not everything that he does is perfect. But generally, he's the guy who, whatever Warren Buffett does, if you simply followed all of his trades over the last 50 years, you'd be a billionaire. And if you started with thousands, you'd be a multi-millionaire. You just did what Warren did. Now, his way of investing is not nearly as highly leveraged. That's the difference in what the Nets have done. Kevin Durant doesn't, on a normal year, need a superstar leader point guard like a James Harden in order to win. But when your team trades away most of their team in order to get James Harden, well, then, yeah, we need him. It's like the most infuriating argument where you're not admitting that not all teams are created alike. It's the same thing with and this is Nick's way of getting around to LeBron. Well, LeBron took down a super team with the Warriors. They weren't a super team. They won 73 games, but they had 2 stars, and they had Kevin Durant. Kevin said they had Draymond Green. And, oh, yeah, by the way, they were without 2 of their starters for 2 of the games, and they didn't have Andrew Bogut for 3 of the games, 5, 6, and 7. So with that in mind, like, what argument are you creating? Nick does the same thing with talking about stats and wins and whatever. Like, look, I think Chris Paul is great. The true value to Chris Paul, I do think we're starting to see in that he's a leader, he's a winner, he makes everybody around him better. But how can we dismiss what Jokic has done and the success and talent of that team? And, oh, yeah, by the way, he's kept them afloat even when they lose their other star. So I understand the argument, which is it's always Nick's argument to somehow take away from Kevin Durant. Like, look, Kevin Durant's played in 29 games. He's averaging 28 a game. He's shooting 54% from 2, 48% from 3. Like, the numbers are obscene. He's averaging over 5 assists a game. He's averaging over a block a game. He's not rebounding at nearly as high a clip as at the peak of his career, but you're off by like 1 rebound. The guy is the complete package. Complete package. And if you want to say he's not the best because they got to add one of the great players, that's just obtuse to the general, the realistic argument, which is every team is different. And if a team is built around 3 stars and you're missing one of them, and there's a massive drop-off because, like, do we know who Brooklyn's bringing off the bench? Who's the Brooklyn starting instead of starting James Harden? All right, go ahead and look at it. For example, they lost to the Milwaukee Bucks in their last 2 games. The Brooklyn Nets' other starters were Jeff Green, Joe Harris, DeAndre Jordan. Landry Shamet came off the bench with Bruce Brown, Mike James, Nicholas Claxton, and Blake Griffin. Like, some of those names sound really good, but the reality of it is DeAndre Jordan's a non-scorer, took 1 shot in the game. Jeff Green's a nice player, but, like, he's a bench player. And Joe Harris is just a shooter. So you're really going 2-on-5. 2-on-5. And I like Landry Shamet a lot. I do. But, like, let's not kid ourselves. There's a reason that the Clippers and the 76ers and Toronto have all parted ways with Landry Shamet. He's a good off-the-bench shooter who can play. Is he a starting